And now we've got to check in on friend of the show, far-right political commentator, Daily Wire host Michael Knowles, who just dropped a pretty controversial take on gay parents and gay rights that is getting picked up by a lot of progressive critics. Let's take a look.
2022, according to this reporting, Amy Wax commented in class that gay couples are not fit to raise children. That's just obviously true. Does anyone seriously disagree with that? I guess some people do seriously disagree with that. People who think that men and women are exactly the same might try to disagree with that. I mean, on a basic level, they can't disagree because two men and two women can't produce children. It's not possible. It's just not how it works. So they are literally not fit to beget and therefore to raise children. But broadly, even if they adopt a child or even if they go to the baby store and purchase the eggs from one woman and rent the womb of another woman and create a child as though the child were a handbag to be purchased at Ferragamo or something, even if they do that, they're not fit to raise a child. In order to say that homosexual couples are fit to raise a child, you would have to believe that either men or women contribute nothing to the raising of a child. Do you think that? Which one is it? Which one do you think, for the libs who are certainly clipping this out for their activist groups right now, for the Kamala Harris campaign, or whichever other groups are clipping this out right now, let me ask you a question. Which is it? Are men totally useless in raising children, or is it the women who are totally useless in raising children? Because my view, the traditional view, is that children are best raised by a mother and a father united in holy matrimony. That dads have something to contribute and moms have something to contribute. The people who support homosexuals purchasing children and raising them by pretending that they're a married couple or something, they necessarily are holding that women or men contribute nothing to the raising of children. So which is it? I probably won't give you an answer to that.
So I mostly want to focus on Michael's actual argument here, but I will just briefly note that I actually agree with him that Professor Amy Wax shouldn't be fired for the comment she made about gay couples, although I disagree with it because I believe in academic freedom and a professor should be free to make even controversial statements or arguments and not lose their job. But what is ironic about that is that Michael Knowles has explained elsewhere he very much does not believe in academic freedom. But now here he is suddenly clutching his pearls to defend a conservative professor who's in trouble, but he doesn't believe in academic freedom in the first place. And he's talked about that. So I'm consistent. I defend her right to say things, even if I don't agree with them. He is not. And I do love this thing that right-wing types, social conservatives love to do, where they pretend that their really extreme old school traditionalist takes are actually the normal mainstream opinion and everyone else is the crazy fringe, when it's actually the absolute opposite. Reality check, Michael. According to YouGov polling, only 26% of Americans think same-sex couples should be prevented from adopting and raising children. Your view is not the common sense consensus that's now controversial because people are so woke. No, it's a very outdated, old-fashioned view that you're entitled to hold whatever view you want, but stop pretending you're the majority opinion when you're a fringe social minority. And I want to talk about this argument that because you can't biologically beget kids, therefore you are unfit to raise kids. That is an insane statement that is actually very offensive to people who struggle with fertility. And I'm sure Michael wouldn't apply that logic to them. That would suggest that a woman who struggles with fertility and, for example, ends up a couple that can't have kids, a man and a woman, so they end up adopting. Well, because they're not biologically able to beget children, they're really not fit to raise kids. What? That's not true. That's not logical whatsoever. Even if people aren't biologically fertile and able to produce children, they can still be good at raising children. Those things are not intrinsically linked in the way that Michael suggests. So while it's true that a same-sex couple can't independently create new human life, like they're not biologically fertile, nobody's really suggesting that. They would need to either adopt or do surrogacy or some other form of reproduction. No one's arguing that, but that doesn't mean that therefore they're unfit to raise kids. That does not follow. That logic does not follow. And in fact, plenty of people who are biologically able to create new kids are totally unfit to raise them and are doing a terrible job and neglect or hurt children terribly in all sorts of horrific ways. The math here is just not mathing, Michael. It's just not. And I do want to address his question, which I think most people in my position who are defending the rights of same-sex couples would refuse to answer or would dodge, because it is a tricky question. When he asks, which is replaceable, the mom or the dad? Which one isn't necessary? It puts us in a somewhat uncomfortable position, because I don't want to sit here and say moms aren't necessary or dads aren't necessary, because that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that alternative situations can also work and be okay and are fine. I'm not denigrating the traditional structure. I think it's fine and important and good. But if you force me to, I will say yes. Either one is replaceable in the sense that a child can come out perfectly okay with two dads or with two moms. And that's not conjecture. It's fact. We have, at this point, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of children who've been raised by same-sex parents and have turned out just fine, or in many cases actually perform slightly above average on many metrics. So I don't want to say it like this, but he's forcing me to with his rhetorically framed question. But either parent is replaceable in that sense, in that what a child truly needs is two loving, caring, attentive parents with their best interests in mind. And that most often looks like a mother and a father, but it doesn't inherently have to. So if you force me to nail me down on this question, yes, either can be replaceable in the sense that not that they're not important, but that alternative structures can also work. And even in those alternative structures, I think it's important to have a male or female strong role model or influence in their child's life, but that can also be an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or a family friend. Not everything has to follow the exact traditionalist cookie cutter model. And you'll notice that Michael just made a lot of assertions about, of course, gay people aren't fit to raise them because I don't think they are, right? But not a lot of facts or evidence behind this argument. The reason for that is that when you actually look into the research on this subject, because like I said, there are hundreds of thousands of children at this point who have been raised by same-sex parents, and we can study them and look at outcomes, you find an overwhelming consensus that children raised by same-sex couples come out just as fine, or some studies actually even say slightly a little bit better, but I would say the majority just say that they come out indistinguishable from kids raised by heterosexual parents in almost every way. Cornell University did a literature review of 79 studies, and 75 of them showed that kids raised by same-sex couples came out just as well as those raised by heterosexual couples. Now you might say, well, that means 4 showed negative outcomes. And that's true. Those are often the ones cherry-picked by people like Michael to try to show that gay people parenting is bad for kids. However, when you look at those 4 studies, the majority of kids that they analyzed were not raised from the get-go by same-sex couples. They had a parent who came out and parents got divorced, and then one of them was gay and had a same-sex partner, and then those kids were studied. That is obviously misleading because there's a broken family there. There's a divorce, and that's going to cause a lot of issues. It's not necessarily sexuality. When you look at broad, representative samples and surveys of children raised from birth by same-sex couples, you see they come out just perfectly fine. So Michael Knowles is absolutely wrong to demonize and stigmatize same-sex parents, and I actually think they're doing a beautiful thing by adopting children who otherwise wouldn't have loving and caring parents and sacrificing a great deal to help those kids get a good start in the world. I understand that a lot of reasonable people are feeling a lot of frustration right now about how extreme the far-left woke LGBT movement has gone. But the answer is not to pendulum swing all the way in the other direction and end up with this tired, old, ignorant line of thinking that is typified by the Michael Knowleses of the world. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below.